It's time for our review. Yay! This is a review for Hannibal, Series 3, Episode 12. The number of the beast is 666. Written by Jeff Vlaming, Angela Lamanna, Steve Lightfoot and Bryan Fuller. And directed by Guillermo Navarro. Okay, so clearly I was a fan of this episode and everything that happened in the first, 5 minutes of it. I mean, I feel like we've been canon for a while. I feel like we've been canon since the start of this season, but to have it be just, without question, audibly confirmed that yes, Hannibal is in love with Will. That's... what... Okay, I'm gonna review the actual episode, not just scream about Hannibal. So we start the episode in Bedelia's office and Will is having a therapy session. Why is he going to Bedelia? We have seen evidence that she is not a good psychiatrist. Really don't want her to shove her hand down Will's throat, that would be bad. But on the other hand, she's very similar to Hannibal, and that probably makes Will feel comfortable. Will has been seeing visions of Molly with the mirrors in the eyes, and he's seen himself killing her over and over and over again. So poor Will, even though his family survived, Hannibal still managed to take them from him because now he's connected to Dollarhide and now his family are set as victims of Dollarhide and he can't see them any other way. Which is why in this episode he's so hell-bent on catching him, because once he catches him, presumably the connection will be broken and he can go back to his family and his life. Will asks Bedelia what Hannibal's planning to take from her, because from Will's point of view, if Hannibal has a person out in the world doing his bidding, then surely the next logical conclusion is that he'll send that person after Bedelia. After all, Bedelia and Will were both his pets, and he might even like Bedelia a little bit more, because she's the one that he took to Italy, and she's the one that he sends cards to on her birthday, and recipes. She was his confidant when he cut Will out of his life, very literally, with an actual knife. But Bedelia tells Will that Hannibal's not going to come after her unless he can kill her and eat her himself. And he's not really in a position to do that right now. And Will just can't understand why it should be different for him and for her. And he thinks it's because Bedelia knows something, like she played his wife. Maybe she did a little more than play. And she knows things that she claims not to. And he does say that in a bitchy way, but I don't think he understood how deeply that would cut her, because it does, and she is very visibly upset, because if she was going to be Bluebeard's wife, she would have preferred to be the last. Hannibal has a habit of collecting people that interest him. He is so infinitely cleverer than everybody else that when he finds someone that can sort of match them, he wants to keep them and make them his and make them more like him. And Bedelia is a really good match for him. She's just as intelligent, just as calculating and sophisticated. And she enjoyed playing his wife. She enjoyed their lifestyle. She didn't really enjoy the killing, but she could have put up with that. But she enjoys their connection. She lives a very isolated life. And their relationship certainly went two ways. And then there was Will. And Will eclipsed everyone in Hannibal's esteem. And she saw it happen. I mean, she was his therapist. Suddenly, all he could talk about or think about was this Will Graham. And then he stabbed Will and he took her to Europe. And they were having a wonderful time. But Will was still all he was thinking of. And she knew she was just a replacement for Will. So to have him sitting in front of her now and accusing her of being Hannibal's number one girl, She can't deal with it because she knows it's not true. Because Will is, and I suspect from now on always will be, Hannibal's number one. And it prompts Will to ask, is Hannibal in love with me? Yes, obviously. Of course he is. I mean, what show have you been watching? Yeah, he's in love with you, Will. But this is such an important question to be asked, and I'm going to try and explain this by using an example. There is a certain other show I watch with two strong male protagonists who are very clearly in love with each other. And it's played as though they know it. It's not canon, but each character knows that they're in love with the other character and sort of vaguely suspects that the other character is in love with them. So when anyone makes like an offhand comment about them in a romantic sense, they can kind of shrug it off because they know, so they don't have to ask, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Me and so-and-so aren't a couple. Which is a way for the writers to placate the part of the fandom that is super, super into that relationship. But it's also a way for them to be chicken shits and not really acknowledge it and sweep it under the rug. So they don't have to go canon and have them kiss and have like a queer relationship in their show. Oh no! When fans ask about it, they can just go, oh yeah, well, I mean, clearly you've seen the show, they have a profound bond. But they don't have to deal with any of the backlash of actually going canon. And Hannibal was kind of like that in season 2. Obviously there was a very, very strong attraction between these two characters, and everyone sort of winked at it, and Bryan Fuller and the rest of the cast and crew joked about it on Twitter. And the L word has been used before in the show to relate to their relationship. But there is one vital difference here. Hannibal is in love with Will. Because even saying Hannibal loves Will and Will loves Hannibal can be played off as a platonic thing, but in love is different. And I cannot stress how brave that is, and how fucked up that is a brave thing to do, because it shouldn't be. If you're writing a show and it turns out that two of the guys have really strong chemistry and the direction seems to be going there, and you're like, oh, this is a fun thing to explore, you should be able to go there and be like, yeah, this might be an interesting way for the show to go, and let's write this and see what happens. It shouldn't be like, oh, that's an interesting way for the show to go, but we can't ever go there because then it would be gay and people don't like that and we'd lose sponsorship and people would stop watching. Fuck that. No, you shouldn't have to worry about that. It's so fucked up. But most writers do. And what's wonderful about Bryan Fuller is that he's just gone, fuck it. Fuck it. This is the truth of the show. These characters are in love with each other. So we're gonna say it. And now you can't argue about it anymore because we've made it canon. This is a thing that happened and you don't have to like it, but you can't dispute that it happened. And I'm so proud and so grateful and so amazed that that has happened. And I also love that it doesn't change a fucking thing. He still hates Hannibal. He still probably has to kill Hannibal because Hannibal has done this unforgivable thing to him and his family. This is not a, oh, now that they know, they're gonna get together and everything will be fine. This is a, he's in love with me and he still did something so horrific to me. That makes it so much worse. And I love that. I love it. And this was just the first scene of the episode. So much episode. So we cut from a scene that's all about Hannibal to Hannibal in the Institute talking to Jack. And there's some pretty heavy-handed foreshadowing here. Hannibal and Jack are talking in metaphors, as they do, about how, in this scenario, Hannibal is the devil, Dollarhide is the dragon, Jack is God, and Will is the lamb. And Jack is all up for being God, and he needs to stop, because he's not God, and Kind of want to punch him in the face all the time now. Now this whole half of the season has been building towards Will's decision. Does he choose a normal life? Does he choose Hannibal? Does he choose to be a normal man? Or an FBI investigator? Or a monster? Hannibal says, hide us from the wrath of the Lamb. And the next episode is called The Wrath of the Lamb. And if Will is the Lamb, I'm concerned. I'm concerned. Are we gonna end in that dark a place? Are we gonna end with Will fully dark side? Are we gonna end with Will killing Hannibal? Will, Jack and Lamanna are all back in Jack's office, scheming away as they do, and they've come up with a plan. The plan is to do an interview with Freddie Lowndes and just say awful, insulting things about Dollarhide to draw him out. Now, Lamanna points out that this is a stupid plan, and I fully agree. This is a ridiculous, utterly awful plan. They have tried to manipulate crazy serial killers before, and it never goes according to plan, and someone always ends up dying. And just learn from your mistakes, boys, please. Lamanna points out that this is going to seem like a trap, because it is very, very obviously a trap. Unless they have a professional psychiatrist to cite in the article. Will asks if she's volunteering, and she says, no, I'd have to be a fool. And then we cut right to Chilton, who we all know is a fool. Hannibal has written an article for some psychology journal refuting everything that Chilton has ever said about him, everything he said in his book and during the trial, and basically saying he's not insane and Chilton misdiagnosed him and that Chilton's an idiot. And this essentially ruins Chilton's reputation. And he's right, that was quantifiably bitchy of Hannibal to do. But Hannibal kind of hates Chilton. And he is kind of a bitch, so not exactly shocking. I do feel bad for him though, because he lied to everyone. He lied in court to save Hannibal from the death penalty. And he did it for selfish reasons, but he still did save Hannibal's life. So, you know, a little thanks would have been nice. The way this scene is lit though, Hannibal looks so scary, like skeletal. You can really see his skull, and it's like his eyes are all dark and shadowed, and it's creepy, and he's proper on the attack. He's like, no, fuck you, Chilton. I may be locked up and have no power, I don't have my books or my toilet anymore, but I can still fuck you up. Hannibal is very stoic and still and calm, and Frederick is just flailing around and shouting and screaming and bitching. And he makes this really horrible speech about how Hannibal's in there for life. All Hannibal really has left is his body and his mind. And Chilton says how eventually he'll be old and his body won't be strong anymore and he'll be put out on the ward and the young ones will abuse him and rape him, and how eventually this place will get to him and turn him crazy and he'll be pathetic and broken. And that's not a nice thing to say to anyone. And it's the only moment where Hannibal's control sort of slips for a moment, and you can see through the mask and the scary skullness of his face that does truly frighten him. Anyway, Chilton storms out, and Alana's there waiting for him with a proposal. Then we see Freddie, Chilton, Will and Jack all in this kind of swanky hotel room or apartment or whatever it is. Freddie, of course, is there because we need someone who's less concerned with the truth than a good story, which just about sums up her character perfectly. And Freddie's been selling Tooth Fairy t-shirts. Firstly, that's incredibly fucked up. Secondly, I wonder if she sold Murder Husbands t-shirts, because I bet she did, and I want one. So Chilton is just really pleased to be being interviewed. It makes him feel important. So when Will keeps butting in and adding insults to all his insightful comments, that kind of puts him out a little bit. And then they start discussing where best to frame the photograph of Will and sort of ignore him, and you can just see that he's feeling really insecure. And then Will asks him if he'd like to be in the picture with him, and his face lights up and he's like, well, I suppose, and just goes in, and it's really cute. Raúl as Parza is just such a charming actor that you can never really hate Chilton because you can't hate him. So they pose for the picture, and Jack comes up behind Freddie and kind of adjusts her arms while she's setting up the shot with her camera. And they're so definitely fucking. It's so fucking obvious. Anyway, as they're taking the picture, Will puts his hand on Chilton's shoulder, and it's just this weird little moment where Chilton kind of notices and goes, but then he shrugs it off, thinks nothing of it, and they take the picture. But it's this weird lingering moment and you're like, shit, what just happened there? Then the next time we see Chilton, he's getting out of a lift and he's got 2 bodyguards with him because he is smart when it comes to his own survival. He may not be smart in other respects, but he is very, very good at protecting himself. So he's got 2 big burly bodyguards, and he's on the phone arguing with someone about all the accusations that Hannibal made and talking about how his new book, Blood and Chocolate, because it's a good title, that's going to come out and he's going to refute everything Hannibal refuted. And he gets into the back seat, and just as he's talking about who Hannibal's fans are, we see 2 splashes of blood on the back window as the guards go down. And then a hand reaches in and just drags him out. And we cut to black. And we fade up on Chilton glued to a wheelchair, gagged, with what appears to be a sanitary pad over his eyes. Which is odd. Why does Dollarhide have one? Did Reba leave them there? Why not just blindfold him? That was odd. And Chilton's like very groggily coming to, and he's like, why does my skin hurt? Have I been burned? Oh God, have I been burned? And then Dollarhide, who's in full dragon mode at this stage, says, burned? Burned. No. Chilton gave him the idea! He gave him the idea to burn him! Ah! So Dollarhide's pretty pissed off at Chilton for lying about him, and Chilton is freaking out and panicking and trying really hard to keep a level head and being like, look, I haven't seen your face, I don't know who you are or where we are, there's no need to kill me, I'm not going to say anything about you, I'll tell everyone that I was lying and that you're really, really great and you're not, like, fairyish at all, you're very dragony and I'm really, really, really sorry. And, oh God, Chilton is a twat, but he does not deserve any of this. And then there's this shot from below, and it's so frightening, where you're just looking up at Chilton's face, and then Dollarhide looming above him with his face covered in that mask thing. And it's kind of reminiscent of the prototype Daredevil mask from the Daredevil series, which sort of made me laugh for a second, but then things got horrible and I couldn't laugh anymore. But he's standing over him and he's all looming and doing these dragony movements, and poor Chilton is there just terrified. It's all so incredibly tense. And then the doorbell rings, and then we hear Reba's voice calling for Dollarhide. Now, Dollarhide has called in sick to work so he can stay home and torture Chilton. And Reba has heard this, and she's come over to bring him soup. And I'm so frightened for her until she says her taxi is waiting. There's a taxi driver waiting outside for her. So he can't kill her. He can't, because taxi driver will know. But we're left with this really awkward situation where Dragony Dollarhide is trying to pretend to be regular person Dollarhide, and Reba wants to say her piece and have, a proper heart-to-heart about their relationship. And Chilton is just watching all of this. And once or twice, Reba, looks over, well, doesn't look, but, inclines her head over towards where Chilton is. And I sort of wonder if she can sense that he is in the room, and I'm really hoping she can, so then she can run back to her taxi and call the police and he can be saved. That doesn't happen, but it would have been nice. So Dollarhide shows Chilton all these images and really scares him, and then he sets him up in front of a camera and has him say what he wants and refute all the claims that he made previously. And when he finishes, Dollarhide tells him that he did very well, and there's this little spark of hope in Chilton that's like, "Oh, can I go home now? Are you going to release me?" And Dollarhide's like, "Yeah, of course." But then, and he puts back on his mask, and he animalistically climbs over the table and into Chilton's lap, and he bites his lips off his face, and we're just left with the image of Chilton screaming and his mangled fucking face, and oh my god. And then Dollarhide posts the lips to Hannibal in the Institute. I don't understand why Hannibal was allowed to open that letter, because they scan it and everything beforehand to check there's no weapons or anything in it. Surely they would have seen, oh, there's organic tissue in here. That's not allowed either. What is this? And would have checked it. But no, Alana just brings it in and they know it's from Dollarhide. And the only reason I can think of is that in case it's anything hazardous, they don't want to risk opening it themselves, and they're just like, oh, fuck it, let Hannibal open it. He opens it, it's lips. He eats one of them. So Hannibal is in a straitjacket and tied up to the wheelie thing, and Alana and Jack are questioning him. "I'm sorry, Jack. The tragedy of what's happened to Frederick has put me in an excellent humour." And he's so fucking cheerful, and it's sort of hilarious, because cheerful Hannibal makes me laugh. And then he turns to Alana and says, "You could have provided anything Dr. Chilton could. That would have been your lip I was tasting." Again. And it's just not the time for that. The next thing we see is Will back in Bedelia's office, and she's asking him would he like to talk about it. And you know what? At this point I'm really glad that he's having therapy with Bedelia, because even though she's been shown to be a manipulative, cold, calculating, awful therapist, much like Hannibal, at least Will has someone to talk to. Because he can't talk to anyone else, and he certainly can't talk to anyone else truthfully. He wanted the world to know his face, and now he doesn't have one. Jesus! And Bedelia calls him out for putting his hand on Chilton's shoulder, and he tries to play it off like, oh, she's trying to make the picture look authentic. But she's not having any of that, and she makes him admit what he did. And then she says, "That's participation." Which is a callback to the first episode of the season where Hannibal is beating Anthony Dumont to death, and he asks Bedelia, "Are you observing or participating?" Will has been claiming for a long time to only be observing, but he hasn't. He's been participating. He is the reason that Chilton had his face ripped off. He is the reason that Chilton gets set on fire. He marked him as being the one to attack. Hannibal Lecter does have agency in the world. He has you. Because Hannibal wanted Chilton punished for his rudeness, and without ever having to be told, Will ensured that Chilton died. So he's very much an agent of Hannibal. But the question still remains, is he his puppet, or his plaything, or is he his partner in crime? And I feel like those are questions that are going to be answered in the next episode, at least I hope they are. I was talking so long the battery died, so I've had to move the camera to plug it in. And I still have more to say! Now, I think in terms of actual time in the show, that the therapy session must take place after the events of the rest of the episode, because Bedelia says, "You may as well have struck the match yourself." And then we cut to Frederick being set on fire. From what I understand, in the book Red Dragon, that actually happens to Freddie Lowndes. But in season 2, Will pretended to set her on fire in a wheelchair and wheel her through a place. So, you know, they didn't want to rehash that. So they've had it happen to Chilton here. Like, what a horrible, horrible way to die. Only, he didn't die. So I now, like, 100% seriously am of the opinion that Frederick Chilton is immortal. He's just a coincidentally immortal character in the show. He has been disemboweled. He has been shot in the face. He has had his face, like, ripped off. He's been set on fire. And he is still alive. That is insane. That is utterly absurd. And the only logical explanation is that he's immortal. So that's just what I'm going with now. And he tells them, there's a black woman, she's blind. And Dollarhide said the name Reba on the phone, so they put 2 and 2 together, and I'm like, yes, okay, they can go find Reba and use her to track down Dollarhide and, like, protect her, everything will be fine. But no, because the next scene, Reba is tied up in the back of Dollarhide's serial killer van. And I knew we would end up here. It was obvious from the moment he gave her a lift home. But I didn't want us to. And she's so confused. She thinks this is just a, like, romantic thing, in that he feels very strongly for her and doesn't know how to express it, so he's kidnapped her, and she's like, it's nice that you care about me, but this is scaring me, and you can't actually do this, and why don't we just be friends and have a nice time, and there's no need to kidnap me, dude. And he's like, no, shut up, I need to tell you a thing. And he gets right up in her face and says, I am the dragon. And then he stands back and his wings unfurl behind him and he's just standing there, and then it's the end of the episode. I had more to talk about, but this is going to be an insanely long video as it is, so I'll save it for next week, although next week's probably going to be really long as well, because it's probably going to be really good and it's the season finale, so I think I will just make an extra, like, end of series overview video afterwards, just to kind of sum things up and add things. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to see next week's. All the links for Postmortem and all my personal links will be down below. And I've just discovered a really great Hannibal podcast. I'm probably late to the party, I'm sure everyone knows about it already, but it's called Eat the Rudecast, and it's amazing, and I will link you to them below because it's really funny. I've only listened to, like, the first couple of episodes of season 1, and I'm not going to listen to any of the, like, newer ones until after I've seen the finale and made all my reviews, because I don't want to, like, be influenced by other people's reviews, but after that I will listen to them because I'm really enjoying it so far. This video is going to be such a bitch to edit because I'm just, a lot of it is me screaming. I'm going to have to cut out a lot of screaming. I loved this episode. It's certainly my favourite episode of the Red Dragon half of the season. I haven't been enjoying this half of the season as much as I enjoyed the first half. But this was like proper epic Hannibal. It was really funny in places, and it was really terrifying and disgusting, and it was all of the things Hannibal can be all at once. It was amazing. And I loved it. And I'm so excited for next week, and I'm so frightened for next week, and so if I survive it, I will see you guys then.